Hello, I'm Adrian, and today we're going to take an in-depth look at the latest season of CW's Arrow. It goes without saying that this video will consist of wall-to-wall spoilers, so if you haven't seen Season 5, this is your spoiler warning. But in case you'd like to see spoiler-free Arrow analysis videos, I've got a ton of them on the channel, including an in-depth breakdown on Arrow's fighting style that goes into all the different martial arts he knows. Black Canary also has a very own episode. I've also analyzed Seasons 1 and 2 of the program. Returning to the analysis at hand, I believe Season 5 was a very different kind of show from what we've previously been shown. As a matter of fact, the superhero elements of the program took a huge back seat to what essentially became a political drama in the first half of the show, and then a program about Arrow finding out who he really is. And to my surprise, the writers took up an entire episode to patch up and address the relationship between Oliver Queen and Felicity Smoak, which directly addressed several of the points I brought up in my Felicity analysis video. But we'll get to that later. Let's start out at the beginning of the season. The season began with Oliver being convinced by Felicity that they need to form a new team. He ends up with Curtis, Wild Dog, and the duplicitous Evelyn Sharp. I felt her role was actually pretty good. The way she kept popping in and out throughout the season kept it interesting. Wild Dog to me was initially extremely annoying, and his super wannabe tough guy attitude completely rubbed me the wrong way. But the team and Laurel's dad softened him up and he eventually grew on me. His backstory episode was legitimately tragic, and I really did feel sorry for him and his daughter. Once Curtis realized that his strength lies not in his martial arts abilities or lack thereof, but in his intelligence, he became an extremely worthwhile member of the team. His computer skills rivaled those of Felicity, and it was pretty cool to have two extremely powerful techies on the team. Granted, I mentioned this in my Season 1 and 2 analysis, and I will mention it here again, but I personally don't believe Arrow needs a full-fledged team. Yes, I know that the show goes to great lengths to establish that there is no other way, but I really enjoy seeing him be larger than life, be a force to be reckoned with, someone who can clear a room in less than 10 seconds by himself. And while we did get moments of this scattered throughout Season 5, he tended to rely on his team very much. But I'm guessing teams probably screen a lot better with test audiences and do better with the ratings, so they are here to stay on Arrow. Speaking of said teammates, the one which I was really sad to see leave was Ragman. His personality was a little too meek and somewhat boring to me, but wow, his suit was nothing short of amazing. The scarecrow-like costume with its awesome tendrils, his incredible powers, his scary voice. It all added to him becoming arguably the most powerful member in Team Arrow. The guy can withstand bombs! But alas, he was promptly written off the show, and I can kind of see why. He was just too powerful for our mostly grounded heroes and villains. Having a guy with this power set on Arrow unbalances things, and dare I say it, makes him seem a bit too OP to have on the team. A hero is only as good as his villain, and boy did we get a villain to rival the early ones on the show. Prometheus was essentially a Venom-like villain to Arrow. In other words, a guy with the same or very similar set of skills that poses a threat to the hero, but I really enjoyed how he got under his skin and made Oliver doubt the very fabric of his existence as a Green Arrow. The reveal was fantastic, and suddenly I was hearing my name being spoken on Arrow every other sentence. Fun aside, it's actually very common practice to name your villains my name. Adrian means dark, so it's always a go-to name for writers in fiction when they need someone on the dark side of the force, so to speak. The Vulture's name in Spider-Man is Adrian Toomes. The villain in Adam Sandler's Little Nicky is also called Adrian. In Watchmen, the mastermind supervillain Ozymandias's real name is Adrian Veidt. And now we can also add Prometheus and his adopted supervillain name, Adrian Chase. I say adopted because his real name is Simon, but they call him Adrian regardless. In any case, returning to Prometheus, I was initially skeptical about having yet another Archer on the show, since we've had quite a few including Cupid and fan favorite Merlin, who I'll get to later of course. But this Archer was different. He set out to not only match Arrow punch for punch, but outsmart him every step of the way. Merlin did the same thing to Arrow, but not to the degree that this guy did, keeping his identity super secret, working right under his nose, breaking him from the inside out by torturing him for days on end. It was all really cool stuff. And that season finale with him on the boat with his son, and his friends trapped on the island rigged with explosives, was genius. It reminded me a lot of Heath Ledger's Joker in The Dark Knight forcing Batman to choose who he was going to save. And yes, as a short aside, while having the island blow up was an amazing finale, we know they aren't going to murder everybody. That would be a huge step back, as killing those characters would take a lot of what Arrow has built up until now away. My guess is that some will return and others won't. Or they could be super nice and have everyone survive because they found an awesome bunker hidden in the forest that shielded them from the blast. Returning to the villains, I was a little saddened to see that Vigilante was brilliantly set up and then completely ignored in the final episodes of the season. I'm guessing they're keeping him around to pop right back up in Season 6, but it seemed like they were really building him up to be a very formidable threat, only to have him completely disappear. The guy went toe-to-toe with Prometheus and wasn't beaten up. That's gotta count for something. The Invasion episode crossover event was spectacular and amazing, and I am so happy how it all came together. My mom watches Supergirl, so it was especially exciting for her to see all the characters come together. It really made me miss Sarah Lance though. I'm sure she's great in Legends of Tomorrow, but I just don't really like the rest of the cast on that show. As I made clear in my Felicity video, I do not like the Atom. But yeah, that episode was awesome, and seeing the alternate future of Arrow was surprising and bittersweet, especially the Laurel stuff. The political drama that front-loaded the season was okay, but not especially thrilling. Although it's nice to have an alter ego again, I feel that being the mayor and being the Arrow really wasn't all that hard for Oliver. He had a harder time maintaining his rich, spoiled frat boy persona than the responsible mayor persona. There were no real conflicts here. This brings me to what I opened the video with. Season 5 was a very different beast compared to the previous seasons. As I explained in my Season 1 and 2 analysis, which you can see by clicking on the little annotation on the top right hand corner, a big part of what made those two seasons so thrilling was that they relied on superhero tropes as their bread and butter to keep the tension high and the anticipation of what happens next to be nothing short of breathtaking. The secret identities, the various romances, the action scenes, the dramatic irony of knowing stuff the characters don't, the inner conflict of wrestling who to tell about a secret life, the constant threat of living the double life. All of that has kind of taken a back seat now to a mostly straightforward show about a group of highly specialized, highly trained vigilantes taking down criminals. Secret identities are very much a non-concern as the entire main cast knows everything. Most of the time they barely even suit up and the fight sequences are an afterthought more than anything. I mean, sure, it was rooted in character and whatnot, but Arrow literally could not even bear to wear his own suit for a very long time late in the season. So although Season 5 was really watchable and cool, primarily due to how amazing a villain Prometheus was, it heavily relied on him to keep the superhero vibe alive. Bringing back Deathstroke was awesome. I really miss his character, and I think morphing him into an anti-hero is a brilliant move. The actor nails the character, and his performance has always been fun to watch. He didn't get a lot to do on the island, but what he did was cool, and I sincerely hope he did not die at the explosion, because that would be horrible. He's still my favorite villain of the show, and the fact that they're attempting to redeem him makes him all the more interesting. Granted, I'm a little biased here since my favorite superhero character of all time is Venom, and he is an anti-hero that began as a supervillain, but I still think that independently of that, Deathstroke is a really complex and great character to keep around. I was so sad when Merlin blew himself up. He was also one of my favorite recurring characters on the show. He was cool, sarcastic, smart, and skilled. It really pains me that they killed him off, but at least he got to go out with a literal and figurative bang. It also saddens me that they really didn't know what to do with Thea this season. They had her in an important political role, and being quite good at it I might add, and then she just disappeared until the end of the season. I really hope she doesn't die on the island either. The flashbacks this season were okay, but I really think it's time for them to disappear completely. Thankfully, this flashback ended with him finally being picked up on the island, which means he no longer needs to have them. Granted, they could still keep shoving flashbacks in there if they want to pad the running time, but I think they have so much material to work with now that we don't really need an A story and a B story. Just stick with the A story and we'll be happy. The return of Laurel was fun in that for once it was not an actual literal revival, but just another version of herself from a different universe. I'm still sad that she really did die, as I feel she was fun to have around. I know there are quite a few fans out there who despise her character, and although for a while I counted myself among them, she grew on me throughout Season 4. You really felt her trying to find her place and come to terms with the fact that Oliver just didn't love her the way she did. This brings me to the new Black Canary. Initially, I was really excited for a brand new Black Canary, and this one even had the Canary Call integrated into her very being, a full-blown metahuman in other words. However, she didn't add a whole lot to the show. She was an ancillary character at best, and we spent 8 times as much time with Curtis and Wild Dog than we did with Black Canary. Furthermore, her character's romance with Queen is now completely non-existent, and I know that several fans of the show say that Black Canary and Green Arrow don't have to be together, but it'd be great if they could be. It's part of the comics lore. The actress did a fine job with what little she was given to work with, but again, I feel the writers just wanted to have her on the team, but they didn't really know what to do with her. Hopefully she'll get more of a spotlight in Season 6, as well as a much better costume, if you can even call it that. Strapping on the face mask and calling it a day was pretty lazy, and her leather jacket and casual clothes was a big step back. Sure, maybe don't go crazy with the leather and buckles like they did with Laurel's costume, but a middle ground or even something just like the costume from the comics would be nice. It's a comic book show. Don't be afraid to give people costumes. Not everybody can be running around in black leather jackets. And now it's time to address a controversial and highly divisive relationship between Felicity and Arrow. Some fans love them together. Some fans hate them together. Some fans don't care either way. I received and continue to receive so many comments regarding my video on Felicity, and actually plan on making an entire follow-up video about your comments, so you can expect that soon. But for now, I'm just going to focus on Felicity's journey in Season 5. You may have noticed that I titled this video Why Fans Love Felicity, but it isn't going to be a recount of why we do, as I explored that immensely in my previous Felicity video, but the gist of it is that Felicity began as a shining beacon of light on the show. She was always the bright one, the upbeat and honest one, the quirky quirky and fun character. We all loved her. As the season progressed and Felicity started and ended multiple times, she became increasingly cold, uncaring, hypocritical, manipulative, sanctimonious, and retained her sense of humor, but it was hard to laugh knowing what she had turned into. That was essentially the thesis of my previous video. Some fans just did not like what Felicity had been turned into and came to hate the character. So again, why love in the title? As a fan of the show, you can count me on Team Felicity once more. But this change of heart came to me at the very end of the season. So let's go to the beginning of it for some context. The relationship between Felicity and Arrow during the majority of Season 5 was tenuous at best. Arrow was busy dating the reporter, Felicity was dating the cop kinda sorta, until Arrow accidentally killed him, and the chemistry was completely one-sided. Arrow wanted and yearned to be with her, and she continually kept pushing him away. As she started to descend into the world of Helix, she flat out lied to him multiple times. She did not reveal where she was getting the intel that was saving them so many times, and definitely did not reveal what she was doing for Helix in exchange for it. This culminates into Felicity, for all intents and purposes, becoming the flat-out villain for an episode where she works with Helix while Arrow and his team do their best to stop her. This was actually a pretty inventive and unique place to take her character. Sure, it was fun to see her dress up as her very own superhero vigilante for that one Legends of Tomorrow episode, but it was so much more fun seeing her go up against Oliver. She's a brilliant hacker, and it goes to show that if she really wanted to, she could take down quite a few people without anyone ever knowing. In any case, her turning into the pseudo-Helix villain shows just how far she was willing to go to get what she wanted. How she believes without a shadow of a doubt that the means justify the end. All the while she was working with Helix with the best intentions in mind, but it ended up putting her on a very dark path. Hilariously enough, Helix ends up abandoning her, but not before holding up their end of the bargain, kind of, by giving her the drive that ends up barricading her and Oliver Queen in the Arrow Cave, and thus begins one of the most important and pivotal episodes of the season regarding Felicity. Season 5, Episode 20 fundamentally changed the relationship between the two. I must admit that I was pretty caught up in the drama and couldn't believe the stuff that was coming out of both of their mouths. Not only did we get to see them interact with only each other during the present day, we were also treated to a flashback that let us know that there was definitely potential between the two rekindling their romance once again. But not everything was rainbows and cupcakes, however, as Curtis quickly found out when he was talking to her trying to set her and Oliver up in the bunker. She would bring up the kid. Again, kind of cherry-picking the trust examples, as whenever he trusts her as Overwatch, that apparently doesn't count at all. After they sleep together in the bunker, she says, and I'm paraphrasing here, "That was nice, but it doesn't really change anything." But does that affect Arrow emotionally? Nope. Regarding officially getting back together, she says, "I'm not ready yet," and he replies, "I'm not going anywhere." Once again establishing just how crazy in love he is with her, the puppy dog adoration he has towards her. And this was all in that flashback scenario, just to be clear. Returning to the present day, Felicity is incredibly indignant at Arrow for not trusting her after the Helix situation, which is kind of silly since that drive that was left to her from Helix ended up acting as a Trojan horse and disabling their bunker. In other words, Oliver was right in not trusting her with the Helix stuff. However, a series of events then occurred that pulled a 180 on Felicity's character so far. That incident in the bunker completely changed their relationship once again. They're now in pretty fantastic terms considering everything that's happened between them. Oliver admits to her that Adrian Chase pretty much tortured him to realizing that he's a horrible human being that enjoys killing, and Felicity reminds him that he is not, that the fact that he's doing what he's doing instead of becoming a crazed villain proves just that. And after they're rescued and Oliver's recuperating in the bed, oh boy, she just goes and says what so many of us had desperately been wanting her to say. I've pulled quotes from that conversation right here, so it's pretty incredible. She starts out saying, "I'm sorry." Then Oliver asks, "For what?" She then replies, "For being a hypocrite. You were right. I was starting to become like you, but not in the heroic way, in the sense of doing whatever to get Chase, working with Helix and to break any rule to get payback. I got the tiniest taste of what you've been through. I get it now. I understand why you lied to me about William, why you had to. I get it. I judged you and I'm sorry." I mean, wow. That pretty much clears up the gigantic elephant in the room regarding those two. That whole William decision was the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, and she finally understands why he did it, and is open and honest enough to admit to being a hypocrite, and to admit that she was wrong to judge him in the way that she did. And quite honestly, this really helped vindicate her character for me. Granted, I'm not entirely sure if I want to see them get back together again as a couple. I'd rather they be amicable towards each other and move on to a healthier relationship with all this incredibly heavy emotional baggage. But all signs are pointing towards this rekindling happening, if she survives the island explosion, of course. In any case, I'm glad there won't be this horribly awkward tension in their scenes anymore. The show can breathe a little again when they're together, and Felicity has grown as a character as well as Oliver. This was a really important episode in terms of their dynamic, and in the writers admitting that they were aware of how different she had become. This turns her back to the honest, uplifting, trusting, and fun to be around Felicity that many of us loved in the earlier seasons, and removes the cold, manipulative, sanctimonious person they had turned her into. Truly excellent work, and I'm so happy they decided to go in that direction. What do you think of Felicity now? What did you think of Season 5 in general? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe, and you can follow me on my Twitter, Instagram, and brand new Facebook fan page, Godzillarex, to be notified when another new episode premieres. It would also be great if you could join my Patreon to get access to cool behind the scenes stuff and a bunch of other rewards. See you next time.